Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ramadan Mubarak. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the Healthy Muslim in Ramadan. We've been discussing how important it is to respect the treasure that is the health of your body, what a miracle your body is, and how you must care for it, and how our journey through Ramadan will help us in our knowledge of how to perfect this. It's important, I think, to look at what the Quran says itself about health and illness. Because surprisingly, there's a lot more in the Quran than there is in many other faith traditions, in a very specific way. What becomes obvious as you listen to the ayats that I will read is that the Quran is hinting as an interlink, at least an interdependence, between physical illnesses and what the Quran describes as diseases of the heart. And we'll be discussing this later. But I'd like you to pay attention to what the Quran has to say. One point it says, "And Allah shall heal the breast of His believers. Mankind, there has come to you as a guidance from your Lord and a healing from the diseases in your hearts. And for those who believe, a guidance and a mercy." And of course, this is referring to the book of the Quran itself. And we send down in the Quran such things that have healing and a mercy for believers. There are issues from within the body of a bee, a drink of varying colors, wherein is a healing for mankind. I think that's referring to honey, and I think it's not referring to psychology, but to the immense ways in which honey can be beneficial as a medicine. "And when I am ill, it is Allah who cures me. And declare, Muhammad, that the Quran is guidance and healing for the believers." So the Quran is not just guidance, it's not just rules and instructions. It actually has an active component to it, which changes hearts and can heal bodies. Note that the Quran says that we make ourselves sick. "And make not your own hands contribute to your destruction, but do good, for Allah loves those who do good." So the antidote to our faults is our good actions. In another place, "Nor kill nor destroy yourselves, for verily Allah has been to you most merciful." Very important to read that for people who are profoundly depressed, because they are incapable of understanding the mercy of Allah and long for death in a way that is an act of despair. And that is such a powerful ayat, and it's been very helpful in many of my patients. It also says in Quran that Allah makes us sick. "If Allah touches you with an affliction, none can remove it but He." And Allah is responsible for other things. It is He, Allah, who brings laughter and tears. No, we're not even responsible for what we think is in control, which is our emotions. Allah is far closer to our expression of ourselves, our personality, who we are, is far more intimately involved than we think. In religion, there are ways by which we have to come to a spiritual understanding. This is what I call spiritual intelligence. What is it that we're talking about on a spiritual path or following a religion. It's a profound, profound thing. And it's an important question to ask. Is a good hadith Qudsi, which says, I am as you imagine me to be, or as you think me to be. You might think that's a little strange, but of course it's true. We're there with finite intelligences, and how can we understand the Supreme Being who created the universes and created us in all our complexity and knows our destiny and knows the beating of the wing of a fly? How can we understand who that is? There was a very interesting study once of individuals who went into a mental hospital, a psychiatric unit, with various psychiatric disorders, depression, anxiety, obsessional disorder, schizophrenia, whatever. And the study was quite simple. The study asked the people from all faiths and no faiths, what was their concept of God before they went in, or as they were going in? And they asked them again when they left, and they asked them again 6 months later. And what was very clear was that as these people healed their emotional disorders, their understanding of who they thought God was, what their mental framework of what God was, changed profoundly. So a terrifying, vengeful, wrathful God became compassionate and merciful as their depression lifted. A God who was judgmental for the anxious person, suddenly they understood that God loved them. They had no concept that God could love them. But once their anxiety had been relieved, they understood Allah differently. And this is important. I can't stress how important in the treatment of all illness. And the Quran stresses, I think, from the little that I've read to you, the interdependence of our bodies and of the spiritual blessings in the Quran, where we can understand through the film of our misunderstanding, we can see through the film of our misunderstanding how we can change our perception by reading clearly the words of the Quran. Why do I stress illness? I've emphasized in previous talks how we should think of ourselves as Olympians, how we should carefully value and protect our health. We should shepherd the way we use our bodies, the way we feed our bodies, the balance of our time management, our sleep, our exercise. All of these things are vitally important to protect the physical vessel, which is the manifestation of how we can be on the spiritual life, which is at the point of being human and the point of being a servant of Allah. And if your body is wonky, you can't do it as well as you should. The Quran here stresses the interdependence of our spiritual life and our physical life. Through Ramadan, of course, we have the sublime knowledge and recitation of the Quran under circumstances where, having been nearly brain dead from fasting through the day, we suddenly have mental clarity because we've just broken the fast. And the meaning of the Quran leaps off the page. So many times in Quran you will read an ayat, you've read many times before, and understand its meaning like an electric flash for the first time. This is part physiology, part spirituality. I'm only a doctor. I can't understand which part is which, but I can promise you that it happens. And that's the point of fasting. And that's the point of this whole complexity of what it is to be human, to be vulnerable, to be weak, to be sick, and to try to do something about it. And Ramadan is absolutely the best time that we have to do this. I'll be talking in the next part of exactly how we have been advised in the past to help ourselves in this way. I hope you come back. Thank you. Welcome back. Of course, healing is a mystery and has remained a mystery in all religions. Socrates said, "I dress the wound and God heals it." So that distinction between the effort that man can make towards his own sustenance and his own protection and the influence of an unknown being is profound. In my profession as a doctor, I come across it all the time, that treatments will be applied which we think should work, and they don't. In another situation, the opposite happens. You think somebody's absolutely not going to survive, and they do. And there's a lot you can't honestly, scientifically explain. In Quran it says very clearly, Ibrahim says, "And when I am ill, it is he who cures me." At another point, if Allah touches me with an affliction, none can cure him but remove it but he. And the Quran, as we've already said, is itself a book of healing. O mankind, there's come unto you a direction from your Lord and a healing for the heart, for those who believe in guidance and mercy. We have sent down the Quran, that which is a healing and a mercy to those who believe. So the Quran itself is a healing. What is it that we get from the Quran that can lead to healing? The prime thing, of course, is who we are. The man with no belief in Allah understands himself to be a biological organism with life, and that life will end. And they think, they come to terms with rationalizing it, that they're not looking for anything after life, but an eternal sleep in which they're not conscious, and that's it. They've had the enjoyment of consciousness and of life, and they're grateful for it. That's all they want to know. For us, it's profoundly different, for all people of religion. We believe there is a point to humanity which is beyond their own biological existence. The work of Wilhelm Schmidt, who was an anthropologist in the 1880s, an amazing man who wrote 300 books on the study of the last of the hunter-gatherers. In the 1880s, there were pockets of people who did not know man existed anywhere else on Earth. They thought in their little forest they were the only humans. And there were deer and there were animals, and they had a rich understanding of the natural life around them, but they just had no idea there were other humans. And it was interesting because the study of the language, which was meticulous, because the people who encountered these tribes were not allowed to speak. Very carefully, the anthropologists were silent, learnt the language of the people. And they discovered that these people had a language in Canadian tribes could understand 60% of the language of Tasmanian tribes on the other end of the world, looking completely different as human beings. But they understood their language, so they were genuinely from a common stem. And they all had the same narrative. And the narrative was the great one, the high one, the feathered one, the spirit, lots of different names. But he took human form and came to our ancestors so many moons ago that you cannot even imagine or count the moons. And he came to our ancestors and explained that he had created the heavens and all that is in it, and the earth and all that is in it, for us to enjoy, for us to care for one another, for us to care for the earth. And we are accountable. And when we die, there will be a conversation with the High One, and he'll tell us how he thinks we did. And if we're in trouble, we must speak to him. Now, man later on became a herder, and he started worshipping animal spirits. And then he became settled. When he became settled, one person put on the feathers and the mask and rattled the bones, and he became God with the powers over life and death. And Allah has had to send messengers to get back to the purity of the original understanding. And our Quran is the last of those messages, and we have to value it deeply, because since it was since it was revealed, we have many, many conflicting messages. And nothing is more precious to us than how we survive as a human organism through our lives, and how we protect ourselves spiritually and physically to do the best that Allah requires of us, which is his message to primitive man. So our belief in Allah as the creator and the sustainer and the protector takes us right back to what we understand of primitive man. And we know of the medical benefits of a religious belief. This is to the annoyance, I think, of some doctors. They have realized that people who themselves pray and have a belief will, in the course of a difficult operation, post-operative care and so on, their healing is faster, they have less secondary infections, their pain control is less. The holier the person, the less the requirement they have for pain. I can attest to this as a physician, and on 2 occasions I have met people of extraordinary sanctity. It's been frightening to see how little medicine they require, especially sedation, and no pain relief under circumstances when other people would require it. And they see the physician looking on completely shocked and say, yes, 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 yes. This was known, of course, to the sheikhs, and one of our great sheikhs, Abdul Qadir al-Jilani, was once very, very seriously ill. And his family were upset, were distressed and wanted to call for a doctor. And he said, it's not necessary, it's not necessary. And they called for a doctor anyway. And the doctor arrived and went upstairs. And after an interval, he came down in floods of tears, saying, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. And he was sobbing, sobbing. And they were upset, the family were upset. They said, what's happening? And he said, oh, he's fine, but he's just shown me the meaning of Allah. So Abdul Qadir couldn't help it. He was just healing the doctor. So it's a great privilege for doctors to attend holy people. We benefit. But in his wisdom, the Prophet was very careful during his life to not assume that because of his own spiritual state that we should assume we didn't need medicine. And he showed us the way to seek for healing. The Prophet had a prayer that when people got sick he would recite, "O Allah, sustainer of mankind, remove the illness, cure the disease. You are the one who cures. There is no cure except your cure. Grant us a cure that leaves no illness." There was another prayer he prayed, "Oh, I ask Allah, the mighty Lord of the mighty throne, to cure you." Another one, "O Allah, our Lord and Sustainer, grant us good in this world and the good in the hereafter, and save us from the fire of hell." Of course, that's the prayer we pray when we're doing tawaf. So these prayers from the Prophet for our benefit shows us that it's right to pray for care. And he himself would pray these prayers. And he would pray them onto his hands, blow on his hands, and pass his hands over his own body for healing and over the body of other people for healing for them. So we must seek the protection of Allah. We must understand the power of the Quran. We must understand the power of prayer. Allah intends us to be well in order to be better, to be on his path and to better represent us, ourselves, for him. I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.